What's going on, everybody? It's Alex here from Aleks Physio. So today we're going to be chatting a little bit about Damian Lillard's right calf strain injury that he sustained back on Wednesday, October 26th against the Miami Heat. But before we do that, I need you to hit the like button, comment, and subscribe, and hit the bell notification for future videos. It really helps my channel grow and helps me reach a wider audience. Lillard had the ball and he was trying to drive and did a step back and noticed immediate pain in his calf. Later had an MRI that showed a grade 1 right calf strain injury, and they expect him to be back on Friday, November the 4th, so about 10 days after his initial injury. So before we just talk about the injury, let's talk a little bit about the calf. The calf is a complex that's composed of 3 muscles. You have your soleus, you have your gastrocnemius, and you have your plantaris. So your soleus muscle is located beneath your gastroc, and your gastroc muscle has 2 heads. It has a medial head or an inner head and an outer head, a lateral head. And then the plantaris is just a small muscle that crosses the knee joint that contributes a little bit to some knee bend and some plantar flexion, which is pointing your toes down. So all these muscles converge and connect as the Achilles tendon, which attaches to your calcaneus, which is your heel bone at the back of your foot. So people generally, when they strain their calf, it's usually they strain the gastroc muscle, so the one of those 3 muscles, and they strain the medial head, so closer to the knee. And one of the reasons for that, there are a couple reasons, but one of the reasons is your gastrocnemius is primarily composed of fast twitch muscle fibers. So it's going to be injured in movements that are performed at a higher velocity, sprinting, running, cutting, accelerating, decelerating movements in sports like basketball, tennis, football, things like that, soccer. The gastrocnemius also crosses the knee joint. That means it contributes to knee movements, particularly with knee flexion or knee bending. And a lot of individuals, when they injure their calf, is because it attaches above the knee or it crosses the knee joint. So it not only influences movement of your ankle, but it also influences movement of your knee. So a lot of times the injuries will happen when your gastrocnemius is already lengthened or it's already stretched, and then it's kind of trying to contract. So it's trying to shorten in those higher intensity movements. As we can see with Damian Lillard's injury, what happened is he lunged forward and then he tried to step back, and that kind of transition push off from the lunging forward to the step back, he felt that moment of pain and he had to come off. Look at his right leg. When he lunges forward, his knee is bent and his ankle is dorsiflexed. So he goes from that position where he accelerates and he goes into that knee bend dorsiflex position, and then he decelerates into more of a bent knee to straight knee and dorsiflex to more of a neutral foot. And that transition is when that injury happens, where the muscle is basically trying to shorten as it's already in a lengthened position. So remember, because the gastroc muscle is more commonly injured because it crosses the knee and plays a role in knee movements, then it needs to be able to go from that position of lengthening to shortening. And because this is a movement that, even though he does it thousands and thousands of times in games and in practices, sometimes all it takes is that one movement to reach that threshold and go above the threshold of what that tissue is capable of, with the game going on and all the adrenaline, and then that's how the injury happens. Plus, we don't really know a lot about his past injury history. Did he, have a small strain beforehand, sometime in the summer or off season, or past history? So I don't really know too much information about that. That's the medical team would look at that, but those can play a role as well, because if you get back too early and you're at like maybe 90-85% and you're just playing, then these are the kinds of moments that these kind of things can happen. If we look at this model here of the ankle, so when I say dorsiflexion, you can point your toes up towards you. But you can also move your leg. You can also move your leg on your ankle as well. Ankle is in dorsiflex position by either moving your shin bone on your ankle or by moving your ankle on your shin bone. You're decreasing the angle in this space here. So this is your ankle joint right here. So when he's lunging forward, his knee is bent and he's in this position. So his shin bone is moving on his ankle, and then he's going from there to straightening his knee and bringing his foot back to more of a neutral kind of plantar flex position. And that's what's contributing to that injury. The other thing that's important to know is with calf injuries, there are 3 grades. So there's grade 1, grade 2, and grade 3. So it said that he had a grade 1 calf strain injury. So grade 1 is the least severe of the 3. It usually means that there's a tearing in the muscle, a small proportion or percentage of tearing in the muscle. So usually anywhere from 1 to 15, 20%. A grade 2 strain is when there is 20 to 80, 90% of the muscle is torn, and then a grade 3 strain is the muscle is torn completely and usually managed via surgery to repair the muscle and to join it together. It can also be managed conservatively without surgery, but usually those full ruptures are quite devastating and quite lengthy in time. They don't necessarily have a lot of pain. It's more so just weakness, and there may be a palpable defect in which you can actually feel where the disconnect lies between one part of the muscle and the other because it's fully torn across. So the grade 1 strain that Damian Lillard had is a minor strain, but nonetheless, because your gastroc muscle is primarily composed of these fast twitch muscle fibers, it's imperative that the rehab in these injuries takes place before you go back to sport, and especially before you go back to sport too early. And it's a lot of the whole load management stuff that has been circulating over the past few years with Kawhi Leonard's injury. So primarily, the first little bit, there's going to be some pain, discomfort, some tenderness, some tightness, maybe some bruising, some swelling, some difficulty with walking, and it's going to reproduce pain when he tries to point his toes up towards the ceiling, and also when he tries to point his toes down. And the reasoning for that is because the gastroc muscle is primarily responsible for pointing your toes down, but when you do the opposite movement and you point your toes up, then it's being put on stretch. So in the first little bit, the key points in rehab is to try to rest, get some ice to decrease some of the swelling, but also try to protect the area. So either using some crutches to offload some of the weight, but also trying to, continue to do some movements, some very gentle ranges of motion and stretching exercises early on, maintain the strength in the muscles around, so in your hips, your knees, and still try to maintain some level of conditioning as well. Generally, the timeline for these kind of injuries and with regards to recovery could be from 1 to 3 weeks, and it's really important that the individual is able to have full range of motion. There are no strength discrepancies from one side to the other, and they're able to jump, cut, do all these movements in a game-like environment. Because if there is still some stiffness, pain, and they try to come back too early, you can't beat physiology, right? So, this is kind of what happened with Kevin Durant. He started with a calf strain, and he tried to go back too early, and then obviously the calf muscles, they come together with the Achilles to attach to your heel bone, and what happened is, if he didn't recover too well, or if there was a lot of pressure for him to get back to that series, what happens? Well, we all know what happens. He tore his Achilles, which is obviously a much longer recovery and delay and a much bigger surgery than a calf strain, but it started off as a calf strain, right? So just something, obviously the team is going to be mindful of, just to make sure that he doesn't go back too quickly, and making sure that he feels confident in himself and is capable of doing all these kind of return to sport activities and movements before he gets back on the court. So yeah, that's pretty much it. So Damian Lillard had a grade 1 calf strain. Hopefully you've learned a little bit about what a strain is, the classification. We chatted a little bit about what are some symptoms, what can be done, what does therapy look like, and Damian Lillard is obviously going through therapy right now, getting his body right and getting his calf healed. And this is obviously an injury that doesn't require any sort of surgery, but something that should get better as long as those appropriate load management principles and gradually building up the tolerance based on symptoms and abilities is adhered to. And then he should be back on the court in a little bit, in a few days actually, if he's following kind of those guidelines. So let me know what you thought. Hopefully you learned a few things about calf strains and how we grade them and how we diagnose them and how we treat them. I found this video informative. Please hit the like button, comment, subscribe. It really helps my video and my channel grow. Until next time, if you have any questions, comments, or concerns, please leave them below. And we'll see you soon. Thanks.